Oh,
In our first video, Lynn and I introduced a phrase that we've coined called the termites of marriage. And that phrase came from our experience in termites, with termites in the natural. We've had experience with a termite invasion of our home here in the warm semi-tropics that we live in. Termites, if you're not acquainted with them, have the five following characteristics. Number one, they come into your home unnoticed. Number two, once they often have done a considerable amount of damage by the time they do get discovered. Number three, and thankfully, termites leave trails that allow you to know that you have termites in the home. Number four, termites once discovered, need to be dealt with completely and vigorously. You cannot delay your treatment, and you need to do complete treatment. Number five, termites, once you've got them out of your home, you need to have a maintenance or surveillance system or calendar that keeps them out of your home. Well, termites in your marriage are similar. We have our puppy, border collie puppy, and our feral cat, kitten, are playing, so you can ignore them in the background. Termites in marriage are similar to termites in the natural. Number one, those termites in marriage come in completely unnoticed. Number two, when they have come in and you finally discover them, they have already done a lot of the damage in your marriage. Number three, termites in your marriage, the good news is, leave trails. You have ways of discovering whether you have these termites or not. Number four, when you do discover the termites in your marriage, you need to deal with them completely, vigorously, until at least they are dealt with. And number five, once you have them out of your marriage, you want to make sure that you have a maintenance or surveillance system that keeps them out of your marriage. So today, as promised, we're going to deal with one termite in your marriage. And this is the termite called triggers. So what is a trigger? Well, let me read, because I can't remember this even if I wanted to, a Webster's definition of triggers. Triggers are sensory reminders that cause painful memories or certain symptoms to resurface. Did you hear that? They're sensory reminders that cause painful memories or certain symptoms to resurface. We've all had these triggers. We all are acquainted with triggers, probably. But we don't talk about triggers in marriage enough. Triggers are strong emotions. They're reactions that typically are over the top. When you compare to what seemed to have triggered them, a casual, a sentence or a phrase or a word, or even a glance, and the reaction is over the top. That's one sign, by the way, that you have a trigger. Triggers in marriage are very, very common, and if left unresolved, will cause a great deal of conflict. So where do triggers come from?
well, triggers come from wounds or trauma, especially from your childhood, from way back. And it's interesting, but the issue you're having, let's say in your marriage with a trigger, is not usually anything to do with that person, the husband and wife. It's just they've been triggered and they go to that past, trauma. So it's not something your wife has just done,
Or your husband has done.
husband or said. It's just something that it's something from their past.
Yeah, that's really important. It's very easy to get into the blame shame thing when a trigger happens. We've all done it, and we probably all wish we had known more about triggers besides that. So what's the big deal with triggers in marriage? Well, we've kind of alluded to it already. Triggers in a marriage triggers themselves cause two reactions, okay? Number one, the person who's triggered either reacts in a very aggressively outward way, often with anger, criticism of the other person who triggered them, quote unquote, or they do the opposite. They pull back. The person triggered pulls back, goes into hiding. This is Reggie, by the way. Reggie is a feral cat who's been domesticated, and he's doing pretty well. But I think he's getting that sense he needs to be outside.
And I'm
So,
about to be triggered. No.
yeah, yeah, right. And I've been triggered because don't you bite me, little fella. And he loves my thumb too. Triggers that are left, so triggers that are left undealt with in a marriage cause unhealthy communication. You can imagine if you've got one person, the triggered person, who's screaming at you and angry and blaming you for something you didn't do, that's going to cause, that is unhealthy communication. And healthy communication is absolutely necessary to be connected to your spouse, to have intimacy with your spouse. So you can imagine triggers often result in disconnection in a marriage and block in intimacy.
So let me tell you about a couple called Joe and Jane that we coached. That's not their real names, of course. They're 20 years in their 20s, I should say, mid-20s, engaged, and they wanted to learn how to have a happy marriage. They were eager. They did our program, and they learned the tools, and they, happily doing that. But the problem came, I mean, we noticed rather that there wasn't much that would set Joe off, to anger. And they bickered and bickered and argued, and they didn't understand why they were arguing so much.
And they were bickering. I mean, we were their marriage coaches, so that we were absolutely flattered that they would bicker in front of us and argue in front of us.
But they didn't know how to stop it, and what was even causing, like, Joe would just, something that Jane would say, Joe would get triggered by, we realized, and he would say, "You never listen to me. You don't listen." And she was a good listener, we noticed. So that was strange. There's something else going on deeper that we needed to get to the root of. And,
we do an assessment for all the couples that we work with that involves the assessment for what we call the termites in marriage. And because we want to identify those and make sure that we're dealing with those termites as well. And so we did a assessment of triggers for Joe and Jane. And it became very clear to us that, every time Joe reacted and by something innocent Jane had said with "you don't listen to me," once again, he would get critical, angry always. She began to pull back. We began to really affect their marriage. We realized that after doing that assessment for triggers, we realized that, for termites in their marriage, this was one of their triggers, and it seemed to be the most common for Joe.
And that weren't married yet.
No,
they were
they weren't even
engaged.
married, right?
What happened when they got married? It wouldn't get better if they don't deal with it, like the termites.
Right. So
in your house.
So it's been commonly accepted, and we agree with some of this philosophy, but not much. The commonly accepted treatment for triggers is that you just accept them and you cope with them. Well, I think there's a place for that, certainly, without a doubt. If you've got a trigger and you can either identify the source of it, the root cause of it, or you can't, then coping may be the best that you can do. I get that. But we have had a lot of success in using a particular technique, which we will describe to you, for dealing with triggers and rooting the cause and actually treating these triggers to the point where they don't become triggers at all. And we'll continue. We'll let you know. It was Joe and Jane. We used this particular technique on them as it related to Joe's reaction. "You never listen to me." So they had an argument during one of the sessions that we had, and Joe said, "You never listen to me. You just don't listen to me.
Just listen."
And he was angry. and he was visibly angry. And I just stopped him and I said, Joe, do you mind if we go a little deeper and try to look behind the curtain and see what's there? What's causing this? He said, no problem. He was still angry. And I asked him, I said, so what emotions are coming up for you when you say, and as you've been saying, you don't listen to me? And he stopped and he didn't have to think long. I said, what are you feeling with that? And he said, I'm angry. I said, okay, is there another emotion associated with that? And he stopped and he said, well, I feel sad. I don't know where that's coming from. And I said, what's the most dominant emotion right now that you're having as you just said, you don't listen to me? And without batting an eyelash, he said, I am sad. And I said, well, let's see where that's coming from. So I asked him to close his eyes, and I said, listen, let your mind take you back to an earlier time, probably way back in your childhood, the earliest time you can remember, or that you can sense, that a time where you were this sad. And his mind took him right back to a memory. I mean, it didn't take but a couple seconds. And you could see, and so I said, do you have a memory where you're actually feeling that sadness? He says, I feel this sadness right in this memory. And I said, can you describe the memory for us? And he said, I was with my dad and we were in a room, and I think it was a room downstairs. And my dad looked like he was busy. He was writing on something, and he looked kind of like he was mad. And I wanted to ask him some questions. I was a little afraid because he looked angry, but I asked him a few questions, and he said short words. I don't remember what he said, but it was like he never looked up at me. And I said, huh, and how did that make you feel? He said, sad. I feel sad now, even describing it, and in this memory. And so I asked him, I said, what do you believe in this sadness, in this memory? Your dad's not listening to you. You've talked to him, you want to ask him questions, but he's barely paying attention to you. What's your belief? And he said, I just believe that no one wants to listen to me. Nobody will listen to me.
And I'm not worth listening
And
to. That was another.
I'm not worthy. Or he didn't use a word. He says, and I'm worthless. And that's a powerful, powerful statement. I'm not worth listening to, and I'm worthless. And he's still in this memory. And so, as we have done countless times before using this technique, we ask Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life, to come and communicate some truth to Joe about this, what was really a lie, that I'm worthless, that I'm not worth listening to. And he sat, eyes closed, and then all of a sudden a smile came over his countenance. Now you have to understand, he was angry when we started this. But all of a sudden, it's morphed into a smile. And I said, what's going on? And he said, Jesus I don't really see him, but he just whispered to me and said, I'm your friend, and I'm not going to leave you. And I want to talk to you, and I want to hear what you have to say. It was so clear to him. And Joe began to cry a little bit. You could see what this was doing and touching his deep emotions, that sense of worthlessness, that sense of not being, that he wasn't worth listening to. Can you imagine that? And we did some other things, and then we closed this session. We closed the technique and what we were doing. And I decided to test him. I said, so Jane, what did you say to Joe just before? He said, you just never listen to me. And she had to think, and she said, I forget what it was. She said something, and I said, how do you feel when Jane says that? And he says, she didn't mean anything. It's okay. You see, his trigger for this particular issue was now gone. Now, I'm not saying that his trigger was gone for this whole thing,
Yeah.
sense of worthlessness and so on
Forever. Something.
forever. But in our experience, when you get to something like this in the way that we just described, these triggers often disappear, period, end of story. They are treated. You get to root causes and so on. Now, I know that's a long explanation, but the fact of the matter is, it was a very powerful, powerful way and time, and we've seen this countless times, to deal with triggers. To deal with triggers. And so as you hear this and you listen to this, I said before, we all have triggers. How are you feeling about this? What is your sense about this? Are any triggers coming up for you? Or is there something more that you want to understand? Or if triggers are coming up, what do you want to do about those? Do you want to just cope and accept them? Sometimes that's necessary, but we don't find that's the norm nor the best way to deal with it. If you have any sense that you need to look into this more, why don't you direct message us at the connection that we give you? And we'd love to spend some time just talking to you about this and so on. Stay tuned, because we're going to deal with with termite number two. And this is maybe as prevalent, if not more prevalent, than triggers are in getting in the way and destroying marriages. Don't miss this next video. Jeez, come on. There we go.